So, folks, there is a man named David Hogg, and he survived the mass shooting when he was a child, and he's grown up to be a man who is prominent within the Democratic Party, right? Specifically, he survived the Parkland shooting. Now, David Hogg has been making waves because he's been advocating for the primarying of different Democratic Congress people. And the people in Congress, well, they don't like that. They don't want to be primaried. They want to be safely in their jobs and not have to worry about that ever again, right? And so that's kind of where we're at. And David Hogg has kind of become like this de facto face of a brewing civil war within the Democratic Party between the old guard who wants to keep their jobs and the new guard that wants to demand action, right? And that in turn is leading to a lot of strife, a lot of turmoil, and things are difficult to say the least. Now, here is where things get a bit interesting, because an article went up today on The Independent, and it's titled, "Parkland Survivor David Hogg to be ousted from DNC following investigation into his election." And that, well, it sent a lot of waves through the ether, the ether of the internet. Now, before we get too deep into this, remember to like, comment, subscribe, do the things that help the show, and let's get to it. All right. Specifically, David Hogg isn't ousted from the Democratic Party, and he's not slated to be ousted from the Democratic Party. That's not what's happened at all.
It's a duck with a knife. Banned from Iron Chef for the rest of his life. Goes around the world causing culinary strife. Everybody run from a duck with a knife.
I love that. I love that new additional backstory about Very Knifey Duck. Right? So what has happened here is more complicated than simply the DNC said David Hogg can't keep his job. They're upset about how he's being more progressive. And like, I looked into this story, okay, and that's not what's happening. And also, like, David Hogg is not being investigated. What has happened is that one of the people who is running to be a DNC vice chair, and her name is, let me pull it up here. I'm totally spacing on it. Let's see. Does it not even say in this article? That's crazy. Oh man, this article does such a bad job explaining what happened. Basically, there is a woman who is running to be a vice chair in the DNC, and she has challenged the election because she alleges that instead of having two separate votes, instead the DNC had selected David Hogg, or put David Hogg and another man who's a vice chair named Malcolm Kenyatta onto one vote. And so that was deeply unfair to her because DNC bylaws say that there has to be a certain ratio of like men to women. And essentially, she's saying that like she would have had a shot of winning if instead of them being on the same ticket to be like put into the running for vice chair, there had been two separate votes. And so, yeah, there is a sore loser in this election who is claiming discrimination based on the bylaws of the DNC. So, after looking it over, the DNC has like this like committee that looks into stuff like this. They said, okay, well, we're oh, there we go. Found it. Found her name. The person who is challenging it is Callan Free, who is an Oklahoma-based activist, right? Basically, this only potentially invalidates the election of David Hogg and Malcolm Kenyatta, right? And importantly, David Hogg is leaning into this narrative that this is the DNC trying to get rid of him because he's trying to fight the good fight. And like, there might be some truth to that. That like there might be some truth to that, where like, you know, maybe there are some members of the DNC on this committee that like, you know, they weighted the scales to like invalidate this election and like redo the election to maybe try and get rid of him. But that's like maybe the most charitable reading in his favor that I can give. The alternative is one being put forward by Malcolm Kenyatta. Now, for those of you who don't know who this man is, he is from Pennsylvania, and he's been kind of a rising star in the party for a while. Here he is giving a speech in 2024 at the DNC. It's short. We can just watch the entire thing.
My fellow Americans, my name is Malcolm Kenyatta, a proud son of Pennsylvania. And as you saw, I brought back Trump's Project 2025, all 900 pages of it. And it's interesting because usually Republicans want to ban books, but now they're trying to shove this down our throats. It is a radical plan to drag us backwards, bankrupt the middle class, and raise prices on working families like yours and mine. Under Project 2025, a family making just $75,000 a year with just 2 kids would pay $1,800 more in federal taxes. No, but there's more. Because on page 465, Project 2025 would stop Medicare from negotiating to lower the price of prescription drugs and capping out-of-pocket costs. And on page 587, Project 2025 would cut overtime pay for hard-working Americans. But my friend, these bad ideas aren't new. As long as we have been fighting to make America work for working families, there have been greedy corporate interests trying to take us back. In 2019, my grandma, a civil rights warrior, called me, her voice cracking, and she said, "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. I thought my generation had fixed this. And here you are fighting the same battles." But I want to tell you tonight, my friends, what I said to my grandma. I said, "It's okay, Grandma. It's just our turn. It's just our turn to stand up for working people and to stand up for our nation's promise. It's just our turn to defend our rights and to ensure that democracy doesn't die on our watch. It's our turn to make history, my friends, by electing Kamala Harris as the next President of the United States of America. God bless you. May God protect our troops."
Yeah, okay, so we didn't actually elect Kamala Harris as president of the United States. We kind of whiffed on that one, okay? We did do our best, but we whiffed on that one. But like, dude's like a solid progressive voice. He's great. He's a great public speaker. He has a great presence. but also like he has a very different view of what is happening right now than David Hogg. And I figure, considering David Hogg and Malcolm Kenyatta are both being affected by this election, internal election bullshit from the DNC, worth checking out what he has to say. And he actually put out a message on Instagram about this, and we're going to take a look at that real quick.
Back from the gym. A lot has happened today, and if you know me at all, you know I needed to go for a run. But that being said, I'm coming to talk to you, unfortunately, not about Republicans cutting Medicare and Medicaid or trying to cut SNAP benefits, which we should be focusing on. Instead, I'm coming to you to talk about inter-party Democratic nonsense. So long story short, 100 days ago today, ironically, I was elected as one of the vice chairs of the Democratic Party. You needed 201.5 votes to be elected. I got 289 votes. David Hogg, who is another vice chair, got 214 votes, I think it was. 214.5 votes. And every article that has been written so far about what's going on has completely incorrectly, with David's support, made this story about the Democratic Party getting David. He even sent out an op-ed saying, this is the first step of the Democratic Party pushing me out. That rubs me the wrong way. Not just because I got way more votes than him, and I also am finding myself in this position of having to go through another election, which was hard and grueling on my team and on my family. But I want people to understand, I have been to 8 states in 100 days. I've traveled almost 20,000 miles. I've done call time. I've attended fundraisers. I've done the hard and unglamorous work of trying to build this party and rebuild this party in a moment where we really need to fucking change what we're doing in the way that we're approaching voters. And yet we have spent now weeks talking about one person, not about what the party needs to do, but talking about one person. And now, as this new thing has happened, the press is rushing to take David's word for it, that this is yet another way that people are trying to get him. David knows that's bullshit. This challenge was submitted weeks before David ever announced what he was doing with Leaders We Deserve, weeks before. And I refuse to sit here and allow the press to continue to push this narrative as if I'm not sitting right here, and as if I didn't get way more votes than he got, and as if I haven't been doing the work of trying to rebuild this party. So yes, this situation is in the weeds. It's complicated. And frankly, I wish we weren't talking about it, but we are talking about it. And if we're going to talk about it, we're going to at least talk about it with some honesty. We're going to at least put the receipts and the facts on the table. And so that's just what I want to say at this point. I am upset about how this went down, obviously, but I'm going to be okay. And I'll keep doing the work that I was called to do, because we need a strong Democratic Party to meet this moment. And obviously that requires us doing some introspection, but it also requires people to be honest about what's going on.
Yeah, and I do think that this is something that is being perpetuated by the media, where like people are talking about this as if, and I do agree that with Hogg that like there are people in the party, powerful people who do not like him. And I can absolutely understand this as potentially an attempt to get him out of the party. But like, to me, from actually looking at what led to this seems like a case of sour grapes in the election. Like, this seems like somebody's upset that they lost. They're making an issue out of procedure in order to try and overturn the results. That's what it seems like to me. And like, that's kind of where I'm at. And like, I also think that like Malcolm Kenyatta is like, he's an ambitious guy, you know, he's doing the work because one, it's the right thing to do to oppose fascists, but also to further his career, you know, like that's also okay. That being said, like, given that additional information that like David Hogg won by a slimmer margin, Well, Malcolm Kenyatta's probably in a safer position than David Hogg, who has been far more public about his opposition to various incumbent Democrats. And like, that's that's interesting. This could be you know, the party going after someone who's not willing to play nice. It could be. But I think that the reporting on the story as that is definitively the reason this is happening, I don't know that I buy that 100%. You know? I don't know that I buy it 100%. Hogg seems like a disruptor and not someone who plays the game for establishment rules' sake and wants fighters. This breaks norms and people want the norms that people want, which isn't always good, but it gets stuff done. Yeah, and like I generally support David Hogg. I think his approach is correct. But like I think, could it be that the DNC is being like a stickler for the rules in this particular case, or like empowering this case of sour grapes in order to like try and get, dislodge David Hogg? I'm willing to buy that, but like the reporting on this as if it's a foregone conclusion that David Hogg is out, or the reporting on this that like really underplays like the role of like what initiated all of this, like that's the weirdest part to me, Also, Malcolm Kenyatta doesn't support Medicare for all. That sucks. My opinion, the procedure could have been worked around. The complaint may have been submitted beforehand. However, the DNC chose this moment to take the course they're taking on this. Yeah, but, unfortunately, whether or not the DNC, like if the DNC does dislodge him, that's not going to stop him from doing what he's doing, like he already has his group to like run races against these clowns in office. Like, if this is an attempt to like reduce his influence, it's only going to be a temporary victory because he's not going to stop. If he gets knocked out of the DNC for a time, like he's not going to stop. He's going to like just focus on that even harder. And, he's probably going to win because that's the direction the wind is blowing right now. No, as far as I know, David Hogg is not gay. It would actually probably give him a bigger platform. Yeah. Like, genuinely, like, as far as my take on this, either way it goes, this works out well for David Hogg. David Hogg is gay? Oh, all right. I know Malcolm Kenyatta is gay. Like, he's married and stuff. As I have no clue what's going on, is there anything real in the complaint itself, or is it mostly BS someone can't lose? Because someone can't lose. It's a little bit of both. Basically, the DNC has bylaws regulating like the ratios of like men and women and like people on ballots or whatever. And this lady is saying, oh, well, the ratio would have been different and I would have had more of a shot to win if there had been 2 votes instead of this 1 vote. And like, so you overturn the results of the election and redo it and I'll have a shot. So they're redoing the election with all of the same people on the ballot. And we'll see what happens. I don't think this lady is going to win, though. Who is David? I don't Google it. I'm not Google. I don't know if David Hogg is gay. I can find no actual record of that happening, so I rescind my comment. He posted about his date for his senior prom online. Yeah, 7 years ago. I don't know if he's gay. I don't know. People think they're straight in high school and then they turn out to be gay. Or I thought I was straight until I was 25, and then I was like, oh wait, I'm bisexual. Like I don't know. People be like that. He's an adult now. I'm not going to judge him based on like one thing. He doesn't like talk about what his sexuality is. Also, why the fuck do we care? Because I don't. I was straight as an arrow in high school. That changed. Yeah. I saw him talk to a woman once, gay for sure. Jesus. Does David Hogg is gay? Yeah. But I don't know. I think that it is really... I do think that there are people in the DNC with knives out for him. I would like it if that stopped and people could get with the program of actually deciding to fight. Yeah, I saw what you said, Jess. I understand his date for prom was very cute. Yeah. I'm not gonna like track, for obvious reasons. I'm not gonna track down a picture or an announcement of like who a guy dated or went on a date with. I don't know, 6 years ago, 7 years ago in high school. I'm like, you're not gonna get me like that. Let's see. Anyway, all of this, I don't care about it. I care more about the internal DNC maneuvering and drama. And in that regard, I think that there are, well, let's read David Hogg's statement, I guess. While this vote was based on how the DNC conducted its officers' elections, which I had nothing to do with, it is also impossible to ignore the broader context of my work to reform the party, which loomed large over this vote. I ran to be DNC vice chair to help make the Democratic Party better, not to defend an indefensible status quo that has caused voters in almost every demographic group to move away from us. The DNC has pledged to remove me, and this vote has provided an avenue to fast track that effort. Which, like, yeah, it is potentially a way to remove him if he can't get the votes. And maybe he knows that he can't. I don't know. But, if they strike him down, I think he'll become more powerful than people can possibly imagine. So, is this person who's challenging Hogg's credentials a progressive rival? I genuinely don't know anything about Kaylin Free. Let's just take a look. Okay. It sounds like the person who endorsed, or the person who challenged Kaylin Free is a longtime Democratic operative. She's had the support of like Emily's List, the Sierra Club, 21st Century Democrats. She founded an organization called INDN's List, Indigenous Native Democratic Network, which is a political action committee, or was a political action committee dedicated to getting progressives into office. But she alone funded the organization until 2010. Then she was a super delegate in 2008 for Barack Obama. And then, like, between 2010 to 2019, like, kind of dropped off the political landscape and tried to become, like, she was, in 2019, she was elected as the Democratic Party of Oklahoma's National Committee woman to the DNC, and then she tried to become DNC vice chair and failed. So that is kind of her history. She's also written a lot of books. I don't know, like kind of a party loyalist, I guess. Sounds like a neo-lib to me. Maybe not like a neo-lib, but like at the very least a libby-ass lib, you know? Anyway, this segment has gone on too long. Please cut a lot of this end part where we just waffled around. Thank you, editor. I appreciate you.
I'll say it. David Hogg shouldn't be funding primary challenges as a DNC vice chair. He shouldn't use his position to fundraise for his PAC. It feels similar to Lara Trump at the RNC.
I am not entirely... I'm fine with it, to be honest. I do think that perhaps it would be better if he wasn't a vice chair and also was like, I think it might be better if he just chose his lane. But like, I think he could be using his power more directly as a vice chair. For example, like similar to like Tim Walz, how he's like going around the country doing these empty chair town halls. I think like David Hogg could do that. Like he has a certain media profile he could be weaponizing right now, personally. That being said, like the DNC itself should be like funding these challengers, in my opinion. Like that's what the DNC should be doing. Yeah, like the party needs to be doing a lot of this itself, and I think that that's something he might be able to affect from the inside, but probably also not at this point. I don't know. I think that the war between like the different factions in the DNC needs to get over and done with so that we can go into 2026 with clear eyes. I don't know. I'm okay with like him doing extraordinary things in extraordinary times. I wouldn't be as kindly towards it in a normal circumstance. But I do agree it would probably be better to do it in different ways. But like, there are so few people actually doing shit right now that needs to get done. Yeah, the war's not going to end until 2026 is done. But hopefully it's over by 2028.
Riverboat Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and Swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.